Now, anytime someone says Goldman Sachs, you know something bad happened.
What may be the biggest financial scam in history.
Two former Goldman Sachs bankers and a fugitive Malaysian financier have been charged over the alleged plunder of billions of dollars from Malaysia's State Development Fund.
Malaysia prosecutors filed criminal charges against the bank and two former employees, saying they committed, quote, gross violations of the country's securities laws.
The Malaysian government has accused Goldman Sachs of helping a fund steal billions of dollars from the country. Now, Goldman has denied any wrongdoing, but in the US, the bank is under criminal investigation as we speak, and the Justice Department reportedly wants any settlement to include a guilty plea. That would be unprecedented. Just so you know, Goldman Sachs has never once pled guilty in 150 years, which is shocking when you look at all the shady shit they've been accused of: price manipulation, insider trading, gender discrimination, securities fraud, and those are just the names of their conference rooms. Goldman Sachs, they didn't even face charges in 2008.
Wall Street powerhouse Goldman Sachs accused of fraud.
Knowingly and willfully cheating clients.
Top executives boasting about the profits they made during the housing crisis.
Goldman executives held their ground.
Regret to me means something that you feel like you did wrong. And I don't have that.
American Psycho with an overbite is talking about regret like it's something they sell at Barney's. He's just like, regret, I don't have that. Where do I buy it? This scandal in Malaysia is way bigger than Goldman Sachs. It spanned 4 continents, involved billions of dollars, 14 tiaras, Marlon Brando's Oscar, a $27 million diamond necklace, a grand piano for Miranda Kerr, and Psy. Gangnam Style dude just comes up a lot in this story. It's very weird, okay? At the center of the entire Malaysian scandal was something called a sovereign wealth fund. That's what I want to talk about tonight. Sovereign wealth funds are giant pools of money owned and managed by a country or state. Now, you tend to find them in countries that depend on a single resource, like oil. Okay, so if oil crashes, you don't want your economy to crash with it. So you take your oil money and you put it in a sovereign wealth fund and invest it in things that aren't oil. Basically, countries that start sovereign wealth funds for the same reason that, Diddy and Mario Lopez started tequila companies. You don't know how long the hits are gonna last, so you gotta diversify. But the reason we need to talk about sovereign wealth funds is because they have tons of cash, are basically unregulated, and can be used to rob an entire country. The first time a lot of people heard about sovereign wealth funds is when they were actually helping the US economy.
As Wall Street was losing tens of billions of dollars due to the mortgage and credit crises, it wasn't the Fed or Congress that came to the rescue. It was something called sovereign wealth funds.
Sovereign wealth funds bailed out our banks. Abu Dhabi's fund became the biggest stakeholder in Citi. China bought 10% of Morgan Stanley and 10% of the Blackstone Group. And all that foreign money made people worry.
How much do you have to invest?
We have $200 billion.
$200 billion?
$200 billion.
This is the fund's president, Gao Shiqing. Yes, it rhymes with ka-ching.
You know what's crazy? She did that in voiceover. Think about it, like she went into a booth, it was written down. She read from a script, Gao Shiqing, rhymes with ka-ching. I'm Leslie Stahl, those ethnic puns and more, tonight on 60 Minutes. And then she just banged the gong. Now, since 2008, sovereign wealth funds have exploded with cash. There are 78 sovereign wealth funds in the world. Almost a third of them were created in the last decade. In 2007, they controlled around $3 trillion. Now, it's about $8 trillion. Now, I know that number seems meaningless. It's like when you're like a little kid and you're like, I'll bet you $9 gajillion. And you're like, all right. So just for context, $8 trillion is about 50% of Gaddafi's Ray-Bans budget. But seriously, it's equivalent to 10% of the global GDP, and that money is everywhere. Silicon Valley has taken a shitload of money from sovereign wealth funds, and only half of it went to scooters. But Uber, Tesla, Lyft, WeWork, Wag, Slack, Magically, DoorDash, and Fanatics have all taken money. Fanatics, you guys. Look, the next time you get a Draymond Green bobblehead, just know you made the King of Bahrain $28. It gets even more random. Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund has a 75-year lease on Chicago's parking meters. Yeah, that's right, Chicago. Your parking meters are Muslim. Think about it. A lot of them face east, they have arranged marriages, and they don't eat pork. They're Muslim. The biggest and best-run sovereign wealth fund is in Norway, okay? It's worth $1 trillion, which is huge, especially for a country that tiny.
Norwegians own shares in more than 8,000 companies worldwide, including over 200 in Canada. The pension fund, as it's now called, makes every Norwegian a millionaire on paper.
Norway used to have Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it got canceled because everybody won. The good news is Norway's fund is highly transparent. The problem is many sovereign wealth funds aren't in democracies. A lot of them are in petrostates: Russia, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Libya, Oman, Kuwait, Algeria, Angola. These countries have an average democracy index score of 3 out of 10, which ranks them somewhere between dictatorship and Indian household. In 2018, the son of Angola's dictator was accused of funneling $500 million from the fund into a foreign bank account. Many of these sovereign wealth funds are controlled by autocrats: MBS, Erdogan, Putin. Do you trust these guys? Because they're nothing like Norway. Norway's like a boyfriend who doesn't have a passcode on his phone. He's just like, swipe up. These guys are like a boyfriend who has a second phone. You're like, Vlad, why do you have a Motorola Razr? And he's like, it's for work. No transparency, little oversight, lack of democratic institutions. All of this makes sovereign wealth funds ripe for abuse. No matter who's running them, they want to make their pools of money bigger. And that's why they need investment banks like Goldman Sachs. But banks like Goldman can take advantage of sovereign wealth funds, and they do it in 2 key ways. The first thing they do is they leverage their expertise. Take Libya. Okay, in 2006, Libya set up a $60 billion sovereign wealth fund that was looking to grow, and then Goldman showed up.
Libya's sovereign wealth fund lost almost $1.3 billion in trades with Goldman.
When they realized they had lost all that money, they went to Goldman and were furious.
Furious is the word. I mean, looking at the way Gaddafi treats his own people, I can't imagine he reacted particularly well to losing 98% of his investment.
No, I've been told you really can't lose money in Libya, or Gaddafi's money, or you get in a lot of trouble.
A lot of trouble? This is a guy who blew up a commercial airliner. A lot of trouble is an understatement. Reportedly, Gaddafi's family friend who ran the fund went up to a Goldman rep and yelled, "Fuck your mother, fuck you, and get out of my country," which is also how Gaddafi signed his emails. Now get this. Goldman took home $200 million in fees, and Libya says it lost $1.2 billion. Libya was looking for boring, safe investments, but Goldman took their money and made a complex, risky trade. In court, Libyan officials claimed that they had no idea what was going on. Goldman won the suit, but there is no question their expertise helped them profit from Libya's ignorance. And those tactics seem to be part of Goldman's overall culture and strategy. Just listen to this former Goldman VP.
Getting an unsophisticated client was the golden prize. The quickest way to make money on Wall Street is to take the most sophisticated product and try to sell it to the least sophisticated client.
That's the same way they sell credit cards on college campuses. They're like, hey dude, you want a tank top that says MasterCard on it? And you're like, sure, here's all my information. Thanks for the XXL tank top. In order to really understand how much damage Goldman and sovereign wealth funds can do, we have to get back to Malaysia, the case that could send Goldman Sachs bankers to jail. Just like in Libya, Goldman Sachs was brought in to help Malaysia grow its sovereign wealth fund, One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB. Not IMDb, 1MDB. But 1MDB didn't even exist until this guy came into the picture, Jolo. He was a 27-year-old Malaysian financier. This gulab jamun with glasses got connected with Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak. Look at this. He somehow convinced the prime minister of a country to set up a sovereign wealth fund. Now, Najib is theoretically a democratic leader, but he is tight with a lot of autocrats, like Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines. You guys remember Duterte? In fact, Prime Minister Najib and President Duterte are so tight that during a 2016 state dinner, they started catching feelings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
They should totally fuck. But then Najib would have to imprison Duterte for sodomy. He'd be like, that was great, you're under arrest. Jolo claimed 1MDB was supposed to help Malaysia build infrastructure and increase development, and investors bought his sales pitch.
Let's all think big, let's all be bold, and let's really think about our place in this world and work together to create the world we truly want to live in.
Wow, that's so beautiful and selfless. So what world did he truly want to live in?
Bring out 100 bottles of Cristal for everyone!
Yes, that's Punjabi MC. Yes, that's Paris Hilton. And yes, he's wearing a fedora that was probably paid for by the people of Malaysia.
More than 4.5 billion US dollars were stolen from 1MDB between 2009 and 2014.
A number of corrupt 1MDB officials treated this public trust as a personal bank account.
Najib and Jolo are accused of stealing at least $4.5 billion, and they blew it on insane shit. For Jolo's 31st birthday, he got Psy, Pharrell, Jamie Foxx, Redfoo, Busta Rhymes, Q-Tip, Swizz Beatz, Ludacris, and Chris Brown to perform. He got Britney Spears to jump out of a cake and 20 little people to walk around dressed as Oompa Loompas. Now, it says a lot when Chris Brown isn't the most offensive thing at your party. Jolo also spent millions on real estate, a private jet, a mega yacht, a clear piano for Miranda Kerr, a Picasso, a Monet, and a Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. Even though 1MDB denies it, Jolo helped set up a production company that financed The Wolf of Wall Street. Leo even gave them a shout out at the Golden Globes.
Joey, Riz, and Joe, thank you for being not only collaborators, but taking a risk on this movie.
A movie about a hard-partying financier who stole millions of dollars was made by a hard-partying financier who stole millions of dollars. That would be like if Predator was directed by Bryan Singer. By the way, Jolo didn't stop with Wolf of Wall Street.
The movies Dumb and Dumber 2 and Daddy's Home were also financed illegally. The production company denies wrongdoing on that.
No wrongdoing? Oh, there was definitely wrongdoing. Now you're probably wondering, how on earth did the Prime Minister of Malaysia and the kid from Up pull this off? Well, they hired Goldman Sachs, which gets us to Goldman's second tactic for exploiting sovereign wealth funds: reputation. Whether you like them or not, Goldman Sachs is synonymous with money, success, and money again. Goldman helped 1MDB appear more legit than they actually were. It's like awards on movie posters. Like, you don't ever read that leafy circle. You just trust it once you see it. It could say anything in there. And in this case, that leafy circle was Goldman Sachs. Now, here's how it went down. Jolo and Najib started the sovereign wealth fund 1MDB. They worked primarily with two Goldman bankers, Roger Ng and Tim Leissner, who helped take 1MDB to the next level.
How much of Jolo's scheme you think was actually would have been possible without the help of bankers like those from Goldman Sachs?
No, that's totally right. It would have been impossible without the help of the enablers in the global financial system. I mean, the money was raised by Goldman Sachs.
It's true. In 2012, Ng and Leissner started helping 1MDB raise money from investors who were told that their money would help pay for power plants. The only problem was 1MDB had no credit rating, which made it harder to convince people to invest. So to make the power plant deals look better, Goldman Sachs used their credibility and paired 1MDB up with Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth fund IPIC, which had $70 billion in assets and solid credit. All of this was their verified blue check mark, and investors saw that package, Goldman, IPIC, and 1MDB, and they bought in. Over the next year, Goldman raised $6.5 billion for 1MDB, but instead of all of it going into power plants, Jolo allegedly siphoned off $1.4 billion into a shell company. From there, the money allegedly went to pay off everyone who helped. It also paid for Daddy's Home, Oompa Loompas, and Miranda Kerr's piano. And Goldman walked away with $600 million in fees and revenue. Now, we reached out to Goldman Sachs to ask them about these fees. And they said the fees and revenue were fair given the risk assumed. But reporters say that $600 million is 200 times what they would normally make on a deal that size. Clearly, something shady is going on here. Goldman used their expertise to raise the money for 1MDB and use their reputation to make this scheme look legit. Prime Minister Najib did everything he could to cover this up. He cracked down on reporters. He fired officials investigating him. He even threw a concert with Psy to rally support for his political party, BN.
Are you ready for Psy? Are you ready for Psy? Are you ready for Psy? Are you ready for BN?
How is Psy always at the scene of the crime? He's the Forrest Gump of shady Asian business deals. In the end, the scandal brought down Najib's entire government and he was arrested. He insists he's being framed. So he did what every wrongly accused man does to clear his name. He makes his own version of We Are the World.
This is the saddest day of my life. Hopes as high as a mountain can be crumbled into dust. Why did such a tragic event ever happen in my life?
That song is so bad, it created more world hunger. Najib is on trial in Malaysia as we speak, and Jolo is still on the run. What they did with Goldman caused real pain, thanks to two guys. Ordinary Malaysians are stuck with $13 billion of debt.
They have not only stolen the money through commissions, but they have helped to destroy the economy and the confidence in the system.
Apology not enough. Apology with $7.5 billion US dollars, that is what matters. Goldman Sachs should understand the agony and the trauma suffered by the Malaysian people.
Roger Ng, one of the Goldman bankers, has pled not guilty, but US prosecutors are pushing for a plea deal. Tim Leissner has already pled guilty to conspiracy to commit bribery and money laundering. Goldman Sachs says they were unaware of their activity and is trying to make it seem like 1MDB was the fault of rogue employees. But in his guilty plea, Leissner said avoiding compliance was part of Goldman culture, and experts agree.
Now, it's significant that the bank itself has been targeted rather than just its employees, because this indicates that the Malaysian authorities believe that Goldman knew that money was being misappropriated.
This was not rogue traders.
Right, no.
These are very senior people, and it went all the way up the food chain at the firm, and they should have known.
Since 1MDB, Goldman Sachs has actually been doubling down on sovereign wealth funds. Just last year, they worked with Saudi Arabia. Now they're working with China. These deals are gonna keep happening. They're not going away. And that's okay, because sovereign wealth funds aren't inherently bad, but in the wrong hands, they can do massive damage to countries. That's why a criminal case against Goldman Sachs could be so important. It could help set a precedent about how much we scrutinize these vast pools of money with little to no regulation. Until that changes, there are going to be more 1MDBs and even more Jolos. Jolo, if you're watching, wherever you are, I can't get you another $4.5 billion. I can't get you acquitted, but if you turn yourself in, there's one thing I can get you. The biggest, wildest Psy concert the world has ever seen. Psy, if you are watching, wherever you are, I'm calling in that favor, check your Razr phone.